in some way or another. But shall we jump into judgment?
We shall.
Okay.
And it's such an important thing to discern for so many people. And, the good and the bad of it, where you need it to make judgmental calls when you're trying to make a decision. God, I can't see you live, and that's what's throwing me off.
Okay. I'm going to talk then.
Yeah, just help me out because I'm seeing the playback and not the live.
Got to. And you're frozen on my screen, by the way. This is
Oh,
we're not going to judge
fantastic.
you. You too. Um,
Oh, the joys of technology, right?
I was always technology. Did you want to try? Oh, well, you just unfroze. Okay, that's good. That's much better. Uh, the because I was going to suggest if you wanted to try another round of it,
I
or
figured it
if
out.
you
I figured it
did.
out.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
So
Okay, I'm gonna start over.
no better way to learn how to go live than learning it while you're live, right?
Got it going on. It's all good. We'll figure it
No
out.
judgment there. So what I can do is bring it back up on my phone because I can see the chat room there. So if anybody has any comments, questions that they want us uh, to address, please just let us know in the chat. Type it in there. That's the
Yeah.
only way we're going to know if you're watching and if you have
Yeah,
anything to
we're only
say.
just getting started. Yeah,
Yep.
we're just getting started. And I'm going to
So now we
recap.
can
So
rewind just a little bit because I
we're going
can
to
see her,
rewind
she
just
can
a
see
little
me.
bit. The Google definition of judgment is the ability to make considered decisions or come to a sensible conclusion. So we need judgment. It's
Yes.
not always a bad thing. It goes left when you start projecting your fears out there. So that's how we start this conversation, because we have to understand what judgment is.
Yes.
So, what are those projected fear based judgments? And where does that part come from? Well, we've all kind of existed in this experience that is a system that is against nature. So the programming that we've received is not in alignment with our divine selves. So it is lower vibrational, and it is programmed to make you fear who you are and disconnect you from yourself. So judgment steps in. You can't do anything right. You should be ashamed of yourself. How dare you, etc., etc., etc.
Now here's the fun
Starts
part
to
of all of that. None of it's your fault.
no, it's the programming.
It's the programming. And honestly, the programming that we receive, unless it's, manipulative and purposeful to present that, those that we receive that programming from or that we accept, it wasn't their fault.
Nope. And that's the generational trauma. So it's a matter of, well, do we move forward? Do we continue to evolve? Evolution isn't just a physical thing. Evolution is spiritual first, because that is what propels us forward. So, in order to release ourselves from those chains of disconnection, we have to first decide to love ourselves unconditionally, which completely excludes judgment based in fear. So it starts with the self, and then it kind of goes externally, and then you start to see all the different things that you were judgy on that you didn't know that was judgment at the time. And it all starts to bubble up and surface for your awareness so that you could free yourself from those chains, because
Mm-hmm.
judgment in forms that are based in fear are only going to keep you at a lower vibrational egoic state of being.
Right. And judgment is literally based on all of these factors that we have accumulated throughout the course of our life, based on all of the input that we've had throughout the course of our life.
Right.
And it forms opinions
Right.
and discerning whether or not it's an opinion or if it's a judgment, there's a very fine line because we're all judgmental in some way based on what we know, what we experience, how it makes us feel, how we see it make others feel. So
Right.
trying to make sure that we're in that line. Remember the phrase that what somebody thinks about you is none of your business, and that's correct. But
Right.
if you want to know how quickly we can make a judgment about something, you ever gotten a pinprick?
Yeah.
You know what a needle feels like, right?
Right.
And you feel it as it goes into the skin. I'm being graphic on purpose because I want people to remember this experience. That is how quickly our thoughts create judgment.
Hmm.
That's how quickly judgment comes in. How you
Right.
act on it, how you decide that you want to act on it
Right.
is one of the most important keys. And that's what we want to try and help with in this conversation.
Yes. So how do you start that process? How do you start making yourself aware of it? And how do you know how to discern, how to judge what is judgment that's based in fear and what is judgment that is healthy for you, such as that specific discernment?
Exactly.
I tell my clients start with not bullying yourself. And that includes something as minor, quote unquote minor, as beating yourself up for spilling your coffee. You're bullying
Oh,
yourself. So that means you have
yeah.
some judgment towards yourself on the most ridiculous level.
Mm-hmm.
So start consciously being aware of how you treat yourself, because if it's anything that is putting you down, let's put it that way, you're bullying yourself. Let me just say it that way. And bullying is a nice way of saying abusing. You're abusing yourself.
Yeah.
And it's hard for some people to swallow, so we'll stick to bullying.
And so many people think that when somebody else says that they're abusing themselves, they think, oh well, they immediately think physical pain. No, the way that you think about yourself. So
Right.
I'm going to take what I said a step further, and you and I had talked about this in private. So let's take that one comment that I made, that what everybody thinks about you is none of your business. Let's take it to an interesting level. And I was really guided to bring this out. How you think about yourself, okay, is none of your business. Now, that is a lot to unpack, and that's going to have a lot of response and a lot of argumentation that going on in the mind. Well, how can what I think not be any of my business? Well, a lot of times what we think about ourselves and we pass judgment on somebody else, it's a reflection of how we feel about ourselves. So if you're worried about what somebody else is thinking about you and what judgment is coming at you, then you are already judging yourself in many cases.
Absolutely. So that's another way to discern whether or not if you're feeling triggered by it, your judgment is triggering you, then it's what is it you judging within yourself? Absolutely. Absolutely. And the unfortunate thing about judgment is all the little arms and legs and pieces that fall off of it, like expectations, demands, perfectionism. There's a laundry list. Hyper independence is in there. There's so much meat and
Oh, yeah.
potatoes fall under that judgment umbrella there is to unpack. So that's why the healing process takes layers, because what is meant for you to experience and what is meant to come to your awareness will, in its own divine timing, so long as you begin the process of self-evaluation. And that goes back to, I think we had a conversation about the whole pause and reflect last
Yes.
time.
Yes.
Yep.
But when
Analyzing
you
every thought.
when you see somebody out and they have a hairstyle that you don't like, they're wearing a t-shirt that you don't like, you see how they're talking to somebody else that you don't like. Before passing a judgment, you have no idea what's going on in that person's life. You have no idea what led up to that moment, led up to that decision. So
Yeah.
not giving a moment to pause, reflect, and say, Is this any of
Yeah,
my business? Because how are they thinking about me? How are they perceiving me?
right. And how is it that I have the authority on whatever it is that I am judging them on when I myself have not experienced everything there is to experience in order to discern if that is what resonates with me? So there's the piece that you sneak in there when you start to shift your perspective so that you shift yourself into that space of learning about yourself.
Hmm.
Well, gee, what else do I need to unlearn? What other things did I learn that were actually limitations and judgments? Judgments are limitations, and we are limitless beings of infinite potential. But we have to unpack what it is that the human experience has created for us to give to ourselves as in the form of limitations. Um,
100%.
yeah.
And our conversations always leave with a lot of unpacking to do. It's literally like trying to move a house every time we talk. So
Yes. That's a good thing though, because I think folks misunderstand like, oh, well, I already figured that out. No, no, no. It's there's more. But wait, there's more.
wait, there's more.
And
And
that's
whenever
okay.
whenever you're talking to somebody and they say, I know, when you are offering them something, they're like, I know. Okay, well, why are you still doing it?
Right. That is the
If you
very definition of
know,
insanity. Repeating the same thing, expecting a different result, the very definition of insanity.
no. The awareness is there,
Mhm.
but the knowledge hasn't been absorbed.
Right.
So the knowing when it comes to being judgmental,
Hmm.
especially from within and about, there are so many layers to unpack.
There are.
And
There are.
just when we think we're done unpacking, we find another box.
Yes.
And then we finish unpacking that box and we find another box.
Yes. And then you get to the place where it becomes like, yeah. Because now you're addicted to like it's almost like a game. You're like, oh, look what I just found. Yay, I unlocked another prize. I unlocked another level. And the Mario Brothers song.
See, same story.
It becomes easier and easier and easier, and you become more joyful and joyful and joyful because you stop judging yourself.
Hmm.
And you see how that affects, because once you stop judging yourself and you start opening yourself up to seeing yourself from a different perspective, from an unconditional love and compassion perspective,
Hmm.
then you start to decide to set boundaries, to speak your truth, to maintain your energy level. Excuse me, Marie is asking for a little attention as well. So we're going to
I
bring
was
her
just going to
back.
say we had our special guest coming in, so. But when we get in, when all this stuff starts to happen, this literally just came to me because I was like, okay, I don't want to have to censor this, so how can I say this? But it's almost like when all of these things start to happen and we're starting to unpack, we're starting to find a way to release it in the moment and it not affect us immediately. Shh, it happens.
Mhm. Absolutely. And that pause and reflect piece comes into play all the time because you got to give it a minute in order for yourself to do the analysis and see where you're at with
Hmm.
no judgment,
Yeah,
with
because our bodies are
no,
designed to react.
yeah, yeah. Well,
We
that's
literally have
because,
to train it to respond.
yes, we do, because we're not taught that in the structure that we come from and the programming and the wiring that we've been given from birth.
Hmm.
Um, and there's many, many billions of people in the world, as we all know, and different walks of life. But at the end of the day, we're all subject to the same human experience and the same emotional range and spectrum on every level. So there's different areas of life in which judgment lies. So you have to give it time, you have to give it space, and most importantly, you have to come from that space of learning about yourself. Because if you're going to not come from that space of learning about yourself, You're already judging yourself.
Right. And in those moments, it's going from judgment to comparison.
Yes,
And Eleanor Roosevelt, her favorite famous quote of comparison is a thief of joy.
absolutely.
So if you're not in that area of judgment where it is to discern,
Right.
and it falls away from that into comparison,
Hmm.
that's where we get confused
And
far
put
too often.
ourselves put ourselves in a state of lack.
Yes. I mean, I was thinking about this last night while I was delivering. And one of the things that I thought about was other healers, other readers. I have my style. And in a lot of ways, partially in my own mind and things that other people have said to me. Well, that's not fine tuned enough. That's not connected enough. So, hearing those judgments in my own mind, whether they are spoken or not, hearing those judgments literally pull me back from being able to do what
Yeah.
I can. So
Yes.
when we start to judge ourselves because somebody else can and we can't, or they're better than we are, I mean, we humans thrive on competition. So there is this programming that we have to overcome within ourselves because of that competitive nature that we have, so that
And
we aren't in that, well, they're better than I am, and I'm never going to be able to do that. You're right, and you're wrong.
the competitive nature that we had is biological and meant for our physical survival, and accountability. So again, with fear-based programming, etc., you now affect this as well. And all of this judgment, right? All the different arms and legs of judgment lead to all kinds of roads
Mm-hmm.
that you didn't realize before. And that's why it's so important to maintain that heart-centered space. So whenever you feel, that little trigger that pops up, and you allow yourself the space to review it, you have to review it from your heart, from this is where the reparenting and the psychology comes in different ways, because there's different techniques to do this in many different ways and exercises that I give my clients when you go into detail of it. But you basically are nurturing yourself in a way that you've never received in order to fulfill that need, that lack that's there, that
Mm-hmm.
creates that judgment.
Yeah,
It's interesting, isn't it? Everything's connected.
completely. I mean, when we have those moments where we're starting to judge ourselves on anything, we can do it up here. Or, if we're trying to make a decision for ourselves, we can do it up here. We can analyze it. But I've heard many different mentors tell me, don't try to overthink it. Don't overanalyze, especially if it is something that you have allowed to drop into the heart space and allowed the non-thinking portions of the body help you to answer. There's a reason people say go with your gut when it comes to making a judgment call. Go with your gut. It might be uncomfortable what comes through,
Yeah.
but it is right because there's no thinking involved. It's literally, okay, I need to decide whether, let's just go to purchasing a house. The first thing that popped into my head. Okay, judgment call. There's this house and there's this house, and I like both of them. They both have their pros, they both have their cons. Which one do I want? Okay, I can either spend months up here
Mm-hmm.
picking each one apart, piece by piece, figuring out what the different levels. Okay, or I can, like this, go from here to here. Which house do I want? This one. Okay, let's talk. And this is the way that I'm moving. It's not always comfortable, and it doesn't always feel right in that moment based on our logical brain, based on the judgment that we have on that. Everything always works out the exact way that it's supposed to, good and bad, in our perception.
Right. That's why we can't judge it, because it's really for our learning. It's for our understanding. It's for our nurturing. It's for our compassion. It's for our ability to and capability to, if we choose to decide to love ourselves deeply enough.
Mm-hmm.
It starts with dropping the judgment and understanding that in order to drop the judgment, you have to decide to throw everything you learned in the dumpster, set it on fire, and start from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And decide for yourself how you feel about things.
Yeah.
That's a
And
lot
it's
to
not
unpack.
easy. Yeah. And it's not easy.
No, it's not.
And the number of emotions that can come up as a result can be overwhelming.
It can be, but that's where the loving yourself piece comes in. And that's the first thing I teach my clients is how do you do affirmations and gratitudes, and how to shift your perspective, how to acknowledge observingly and not judgmentally. So it becomes easier over time the more you practice this self-awareness, this conscious awareness of what you're thinking and how you're feeling physically, emotionally, etc. It gets way easier, and then you just get addicted to it and say, give me more.
I mean, our body loves the chemicals that we release.
Yes, because you are literally releasing all the happy chemicals in your brain.
Yes.
With this work. And there is this, if anyone's interested in scientific research to back all this up, check out people like Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden. There's a bunch of quantum scientists out there doing a lot of the research work with technology to do the measurements on brainwave activities, to measure energy in a room with, whatever scientific parameters around it, to determine what the highest vibrational emotion is, which is truth, by the way. There was a study done. I don't remember when, I don't remember the details, ADHD, but I remember the outcome. They, it was a controlled setting where they gave video stimulus, which would invoke various ranges of emotions. So they could measure the electromagnetic, whatever energy we're putting out, whatever technical term you want to put on that. And they found that truth, authenticity, was the highest vibration. And you cannot achieve unconditional love if you don't have truth. And this ties into what we were talking about last week, because we were talking about being honest with ourselves, and somewhere in that conversation.
Yeah.
Or 2 weeks, whenever we spoke.
Validation.
So you need to have honesty with yourself in order to help yourself discern what is healthy and unhealthy without judgment. It all is very, very webby.
and just to make it more fun, you have to do it without judgment, but with judgment.
Yes, exactly.
At the same time, but knowing the difference.
And you learn the difference as you go along.
Oh,
absolutely.
we have an ambulance picking up outside. I hope that isn't coming through, but
I don't hear it. Don't worry.
Cool. Eventually, I'm going to have a studio set up and surround me, so I won't have these issues. But when we start judging ourselves because of something that we lack, whether it be the looks that we wish that we had or that someone else has, the physique that we wish that we had that someone else has, the knowledge, the capability, the this, the that, whatever it is, every time. And I did this experiment with a client recently where it was, okay, I want you to tell me something good. They couldn't. without a but.
Yeah. That's a
Removing the
word you need to
judgment.
get rid of.
The trying to move from just the positive affirmations or positive view, self-view, is so difficult when we're trained to have a big but.
Yeah. Hence the reason why you need to throw everything you learned in the dumpster and set it on fire and start from scratch, because you don't know what you need to unlearn unless you start from scratch. And it sounds like an undertaking and it sounds overwhelming, but I kind of, have a perspective of, yeah, but see it as like you get to put yourself back together the way you want, outside of other people's projected expectations of who they want you to be. So realize what judgment is and realize what judgment does. Are you in alignment with those belief systems? It's all about discovery. So get your little magnifying glass out around for yourself and your little discovery hat on and have fun with the process of self-discovery.
And when somebody else expresses their judgment of you, here's the fun part, in quotes, fun, where we hear the expectation in the judgment. This is most typically found in our careers and workplaces, where we get this is what we expect from you. Okay, great. We have that. Then there's another one put on top of that. The brain filters through both. Then another one and another one and another one. And eventually we are filtering our judgment of what the expectation is through all of them while trying to accomplish the one. And this is exactly, it is exhausting. And this is exactly what we do to ourselves when we start to hear all of these expectations, and not just from one person, but from all around us. Our brain filters all of them, so it can get a little bit confused. Now, for some, they have worked this out. It's not a problem. Thank you. I'm so happy for you. Thank you so much for being that person who is capable and has risen up to that level that never has this problem. I'm going to guesstimate about 5% of the population falls into that category, actually.
Yes.
And everyone else is on varying degrees of crap that they're dealing with inside.
Yes. Yes. And that's why it takes time. It's a lot to unfold. But if you think of it from the perspective of, well, life is still happening around you and you only learn these things through the life experiences. So obviously that takes time to unfold. And the more you recognize those things within yourself that aren't in alignment with you and self-sabotaging, then you shift your perspective and raise your vibration. And now you start to experience things in your outer environment that are more in alignment with a higher vibration. And it keeps going on and on and on. So it's cyclical. It's, life is like this. There is and you do return to the same issue until you've satisfied whatever layers of it you were in need of satisfying, of discovering.
And the fun part is that a lot of times you'll return to the same issue, even if you've worked through this issue, whatever this issue is, you will return because a memory will get triggered, a song, a scent, a movie, whatever.
Yes.
But it'll get triggered and that will come up again. And you will learn in that moment if you did work through it.
Yes. Yes.
And it is all cyclical, because even in shaman work, there is a north and a south. And all norths are just below another south.
Right. Right. And this is all important information because a lot of times I see my clients judging themselves for where they're at in their journey. You can't do that.
No.
Your soul is on its own very unique and specific mission. Your lessons are specifically designed just for you. How is it that could we go back to the comparison thing? So it again, they all very webby.
It meshes right back to it. Because when we learn to judge ourselves through discernment, using the discernment,
Yes,
and not judge ourselves using the comparison,
correct.
that's what we are pointing towards through all
Right.
of this.
Yes,
And I
right.
just want to throw that in there every once in a while so that people know that this is all interrelated and interwoven.
Yes. And it's all part of the process and perfectly okay. And taking the pressure off of yourself to be at a specific spot or place in your life unlocks so many different doors because you now open yourself up to different opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the every part of self-awareness is a judgment, whether it be in comparison or discernment. So what you choose to decide about yourself is directly proportionate to the judgment that you hold of yourself. So that's the piece that folks need to wrap their head around, and how many little things and arms and legs and pieces are attached to that very specific thing. Now all of a sudden you no longer you see people's opinions as just opinions, and you really understand why it's none of your business. You understand that, is this my programming? So that's why it's none of your own business as well. It's all meant for you to unpack your own human experience so that you could move forward towards your highest potential, because we are, what are we? Limitless beings of infinite potential.
Yes,
Yeah, this is a great conversation.
it really is. We have three that are listening right now. I see Carla and Hildy in the chat. I'm gonna give a quick shout out to them. Thanks, guys, for
Thank you.
tuning in.
Yes.
Appreciate you.
Yes. Do they have any questions? Does anyone have any questions?
It'll take about 30 seconds for them to type that in and for me to see it. But
Okay.
it's so wild when we think about how much expectation weight we put on ourselves,
Right.
and should we should on ourselves so much. Excuse me, I need to mute for a moment so I can cough. Okay. I didn't want that in everybody's ears.
It's all good.
But it's amazing. And
Yeah.
why we shouldn't worry about what other people think,
Yeah.
because we think the same things. We have the same opinions. We really do. And we can't help them. You can't stop judging. You can't stop opinion. You cannot. There is no way, because thoughts, and you're going to, because of a lot of my groundwork now is based around thought, and everything else is just an expansion of that into the physical and how thought affects everything else. So your thoughts, they're going to come in. Your thoughts of judgment, your thoughts of joy, your thoughts of, God, what did I do last week? God, what was I talking about? All of these thoughts, they're going to come in. 60 to 90,000 a day.
Yeah. That's a
Okay.
lot.
It is a lot. Most of them we're not even aware of. Because and another scientific point to remember is we have 44 million stimuli that our brain processes a second. We can only pay attention to a maximum of 40. So think about everything that's going on. Think about how smart your brain actually is to continue to maintain health. Apologies to those who don't experience better health and the brain's having some misfires. But it finds ways to heal. So why are you judging yourself?
Well, you're not gonna create new neural networks. You're not gonna
Exactly.
exercise your neural plasticity if you're operating at a lower vibration. It is only those higher vibrations that allow the release of those chemicals, which helps you rebuild your cells and create new neurons. And
And
so,
sometimes the pain from that recreation, that reconnection, you actually do feel when they're like soldering themselves back together. And it's change is not comfortable. Truth is not comfortable. Healing, I'm sorry, it's not comfortable.
which is why
So
you got to release the judgment, because get comfortable with being uncomfortable, but you decide how long you sit in it. Because judgment also creates a lot of resentment. Does anyone have questions before we side
no, not
into
yet.
another branch of this tree?
No, not yet.
We just keep jumping from, we're like Tarzan. We just keep jumping from branch to branch of this judgment tree.
It's so amazing when you can pick a singular word of emotional description
Yes.
and how many different branches and how it affects our mental wellness. I'm not going to say illness because none of us are sick. We were all born. We all came into this world with complete mental health and wellness. It
Right.
just gets dirty as we get old.
It's the religious, societal, and cultural programming. It's your environment that programs you to believe, to feel in various ways that are based in fear. So the resentment is one of them. I know I was going to start to say something
Mm-hmm.
about
Mm-hmm.
because resentment is a big piece that comes from judgment, and that's an unmet need. You just have this unmet need. Again, lack. We're back into the lack. So when you're judgmental, or being judged, or because you feel someone else judging you too, and then you internalize it and judge yourself.
And then you get
So
angry and you deflect.
exactly. And so now we're operating from an angry space.
Mm-hmm. How's that
Okay.
working
And
out for you? Anybody who's listening?
yeah.
If you're operating from that resentment and that anger and that deflection, how's that
Yes.
working? How do you feel physically living in that space?
Yes. Now, because we're programmed to be in that space, and we embody that space for God knows how much of our lives until we recognize that it's unhealthy, it creates the disease in our body, because we all know that trauma gets trapped in the body and creates imbalance, which creates dis-ease.
Mm-hmm.
So if you understand, intellectualize, at least at minimum, begin intellectualizing the idea of the damage that judgment has done, and judgment ultimately is nothing but bad intel. I mean, and I'm talking about the lower vibrational judgment. I'm not talking about the kind that's useful. Obviously, I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that needs to be said. But you start to recognize how much you have to unpack, and that self-love piece is so important, because again, you just keep picking fruits off of this judgment tree and realizing that, oh, okay, we can get rid of this one, let's prune this branch, let's go here, let's do that.
Yeah, it is nuts. I wonder if this changes the view on YouTube. I was stuck in a corner for most of this, so I just tapped on the grid view, and I wonder if it changes on the view on YouTube. Sorry.
It's all good.
I have an yes, it does actually. So now I know for next time, so that we can both be seen at the same time. This is awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
We both have ADHD brains.
Yes.
I call it neurospicy since it's not mine isn't diagnosed.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But
This
all of
might be
this
a
programming,
conversation. Yes,
this
the programming.
programming, it's At this point in everyone who's listening's development, at this point in your life, now it's an agreement. If you are holding on to these lower vibrational judgments, especially self-judgments of yourself, this is an agreement that you've made with what you believe.
Right.
From here.
That
Not
should be
from
our
here.
next topic.
Could be, definitely.
Yeah, because there's a lot of arms and legs to this, so we can cut this one up and slice it in many different ways.
Definitely, and we'll definitely have a side conversation once we log out. We're at the 45-minute mark just about. So,
I'm gonna recap the what to start doing to help yourself stop judging and just notice, become aware of everything you think and feel and do, and allow yourself permission to ask yourself, is this in alignment with me? How do I really feel about it? And allow yourself to decide that you got bad intel, and you kind of have to figure out, like a scavenger hunt, well, which one was the bad intel and which one is okay? And allow yourself to start working through that process.
yeah, find your pause button.
Find your pause button.
We all have one.
Yes. You'll find it the second that you start feeling it in your body. When you start feeling something's a little, you hit the pause button.
and just in case you needed some reminders as to what some of these indicators are when you're receiving bad intel, and this can be from yourself as well, not just from an external, not from a movie, not from a person you're talking to, typing, texting back and forth, not in a phone conversation, but inside you feel this. Your blood pressure changes. Vein pops out in the forehead for some. You feel this surge of electricity going through your veins. Your heart starts changing the pace to which it beats. These are all indicators that you are judging yourself. Just to follow for today's topic, that you're not discerning, you're not giving a moment to recognize how what you're hearing is being perceived by your interpretations, by your programming, by your internal agreements, all of these things. It will have an immediate reaction inside, physiologically. It's not going to sneak up on you when you least expect it. It's going to all of a sudden, like that, because you're going to feel that pinprick in your fingertip, like we talked about earlier. You're going to feel it like that.
And that's different for everybody. So on that note, I want you to, and I'm saying you, collective you, whoever's going to watch this. I want you to, when you're acknowledging a feeling, just analyze it for what it is and acknowledge it for what it is, where it is in your body, what it feels like, because we all have different, kind of autonomic response system reactions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be up to you to discern. I want you to discern for yourselves what your body is telling you, and pay attention to, and this is where you start asking questions. What is your body telling you? And then pay attention when you feel that same exact thing occur in your body, because maybe it responds very specifically to different stimuli, different experiences. And then you get to know yourself that way. And then you can kind of discern more appropriately, oh yeah, oh, this must be happening because my body's doing that weird thing again.
Follow your patterns.
Yes.
Follow your patterns. And that's untriggered. We get triggered. So how do you get untriggered? Well, you figure out the patterns that are creating the triggers that are releasing the Judgment
Yeah,
that you're having.
yeah. So maybe we'll dive deeper into programming.
That'll be a fun plunge. Because I could talk for days
Thank you
on that
so
one.
much for this platform.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you, Mike.
And
And
you're welcome.
this wouldn't have
And
been without your text support.
all right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us, either live or watching the recording. You can find both of us over on Facebook. You can look me up, Micah Grant, on Facebook. You can look up Diane R. DiBiase as well. I have my own group, Evolve and Emerge. Just do a search on that. I'm going to try and put the links in down below. But tune in. Might be a week, might be 2 weeks, but if you're watching the replay, doesn't matter. You can binge. So thank you so much for joining us for this conversation today, and we will see you as soon as we decide what we're going to talk about next.